Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris and welcome to another LEGO Ninjago 2023 review. This is Cole's Earth Dragon EVO. Continuing alongside the EVO lineup of LEGO Dragons, we now have all 6 of the Ninja represented by an EVO Dragon, and this is Cole's. Now it has a really interesting color scheme with the orange and black, featuring some all new parts like the gold horns, making this one of the most interesting core dragons to come out this particular year. Now, in case you're curious, I actually already have put out a full-on mega review of every single one of the core sets that came out in January of 2023. So if you do want to check that out, I have it linked in the description below. But if you only want to see my review of Cole's Earth Dragon, then this is the right place. Let's just dive right in to the review. Here we have set number 71782, Cole's Earth Dragon EVO, retailing for $35 US or 35 euros. It comes with 285 pieces at a 12.3 cent price per part ratio. The set only comes with 2 minifigures, specifically a core version of Cole as well as the Bone Scorpio. Where have I heard Scorpio before? Bionicle fans will very much remember Scorpio, but the main focus of the set is, of course, Cole's Dragon, and this is probably one of the best Ninjago core dragons we've gotten in a long time. It may be one of the best dragons we've ever gotten for Cole, except for just a few very strange oddities to the build that I personally believe hold it back, but thankfully can be very easily rectified, and we'll get into that in the main review. So taking a look at the main dragon itself, the main thing I want to talk about here is posability, or in this case the lack thereof, because this build does something very, very strange in how it's set up. You see, the build really relies on ratchet joints being used to attach specific limbs together instead of mixel joints. For some reason, I guess they're a little bit more stable than mixel joints, but that never stopped them from using mixel joints for dragon limbs in the past, and I feel like for the set, it definitely is a big detriment to the design. For example, take a look at how the back limbs are set up here. These are only angled on ratchet joints. They can only move back and forth like this. You cannot move these, say, forwards because they are just on ratchet joints, which makes it such that anytime you want to actually place this in a standing pose, the feet have to be somewhat off the ground because the mixel joints just can't bend that much in the way that they're aligned here. If these two joints here were using mixel joints instead of ratchet joints, you could very easily just bend these upwards, bend the legs down, and there you have it. That is a much more stable way of posing him if you were able to just mount it like this. Don't really know why it's using ratchet joints for the back limbs here when they easily could have just done mixel joints. The same goes for the front legs. The way the front legs are attached here thankfully are on mixel joints, but the feet are not, which kind of defeats the purpose, because it means that if you want to have both feet planted on the ground, you have to have a very boring kind of front-on pose where everything is just perfectly aligned, fully straight here. Now, imagine if what they had done instead was mounted these also on mixel joints, then you could have something like this, where you could actually move around the limb itself and have it be mounted at a different angle. Don't really know why they were mounted just on the click joints here. Very, very strange that it uses them in the build itself, and I feel like that definitely does hamper the posability quite a lot. But again, not that big of a deal, because if you happen to have literally any mixel joints just standing around extra to spare, you can very easily just swap them out, which is certainly what I will be doing after the review is over. The other strange thing to me in terms of articulation for this model is that the head cannot move, like at all. As you can see here, the head is mounted on a fixed axle. You cannot move it side to side other than, I guess, just a little bit I'm wiggling right now with the flex in the axle. You cannot even move it up and down. It is just fixed. You cannot do anything with the head. Sure, the jaw can open and shut, but that's pretty standard for dragons. I mean, if the jaw didn't open and shut, that would be a huge issue. But for the most part, you can just open and close the jaw, and you can't do anything else with the head. Again, if you look at the way this is mounted, this could have easily been instead mounted on a ball joint. Add a ball joint here, add a ball joint receiver here, have this be able to rotate back and forth, because this is a much more dynamic pose. Having it rotate at least even like this would have been more interesting than just fixing it at a perpetually downturned angle. And for a $35 set, I find it very strange. Maybe if it was a 4+ set where you're trying to build a dragon that is very simple and limit the articulation for kids to be able to play with, that I can kind of understand. But for a larger set, I don't get why this is just fixed and you can't move the head around. That is just bizarre to me. Everything else, though, about it is really, really fun and cool, and I honestly feel like this would be the perfect EVO dragon if not for these very strange limitations in articulation. Now, specifically for the EVO gimmick, the way that these work is that for the EVO sets, you have different progressions in the build, so you start by building a very basic, simple form of the set itself, and then you add on different body segments and pieces onto it to just make it a little bit more complete. Specifically, the way that the EVO build works here is that you have the 2 spikes on the side of the head, which are not on there yet, the 2 wings, which weren't on there yet, and the most interesting part of the build here, which is this entire section, which separates outwards. This just attached right here, and you didn't have a tail either. So this was the most basic, almost like a wild version or maybe a young version of the dragon itself, and this is honestly a very interesting, unique character of itself. It's a very kind of short and stumpy-like dragon, which unironically has a little bit better posability just because of the placement of the limbs here. So this is kind of like a pygmy dragon or something like that. It's a smaller version of it, and then to upgrade it, or once it grows up or evolves, you've got these new pieces. So I like how they were able to distinguish the inclusion of where to plug these in by using red pieces to signify this is where you attach stuff. So you've got a red element here, and then you just attach it onto there, so that lengthens the body out, so you've got an archway curve to the body. You place the saddle on the clip here, so you have the saddle going on here, the horns growing on the side of the dragon itself. You've got the wings sprouting out from the limbs here, so these are just the standard small-scale elves wings, but they do the job just okay. And you have the tail here, and voila, there you have the fully built Dragon of Earth. Now, overall, I think the best thing about the set is easily the color scheme. The color scheme here is a very unique way of doing a coal dragon. You've got the orange being a very good highlight color for the dragon itself, and juxtaposition with the tan spikes. I think the tan spikes were really cool to be able to include here. Of course, you have some gold armor detailing as well. These are actually brand new elements for 2023, specifically this part right here, which is a new Technic attachment element for dragon horns. So it's cool to get a new dragon detailing piece, and I'd love to see this being used for other purposes and other mocks. But my favorite thing about this is probably just the color scheme and the overall look and feel of the model. Ignoring the posability weirdness, I think that this is a really solid way to put together Cole's dragon. It has a very striking color scheme again. The orange and black just goes together really well, a very unique looking color scheme in general, and I think it really does complement, of course, the Cole minifigure utilizing the orange on his costume as well. And if you ignore the posability, this looks really cool. I just have to imagine how much cooler it would look if you could actually pose the limbs and get them in even more interesting poses if you just use ball joints here, and for the head instead of just these standard ratchet joints or no articulation at all, which is just so weird to me. Overall, though, for $35, I feel like the set offers fairly decent value. I definitely feel like maybe it would have been better at $30, but $35 isn't too bad. I like having the core gimmick and having a little build for the villain as well, and the Bone Scorpio is quite fun to have in general, and I do like how they're doing more unique things with the Bone villains this time around. But with that, I think we've summed up pretty much everything we have to say about this dragon. Now it's off to the modding table, because I certainly am very excited to add mixel joints to these limbs here, and here, and to add articulation to the head, which definitely would improve this dragon by quite a lot. The main ninja figure included in 71782 Cole's Earth Dragon EVO is just Cole in his standard core suit, unchanged from January 2022. I put out a mega review of all those sets around this time last year when those sets first came out, so do go check that out if you're interested. Nothing too crazy to say about this one, it's just a fairly standard minifigure, although I do love the color scheme of the black and orange. The more interesting figure here is the Bone Scorpio. And this is just basically using a standard minifigure and placing him on top of this scorpion-like attachment here. The most interesting thing to me is this brand new jaw element. This is the cheapest set to include the new mold for the jaw here. It almost feels like a standard traditional kind of Japanese-style Oni type of mask, or something that you would see in a kabuki show where you've got this kind of very large demon-like jaw here on the bottom. I just really like the piece. piece, and I certainly hope it's used in different colors even beyond this wave, because it looks really good on these minifigures. It certainly works very well as an add-on piece, and definitely does make these figures feel just that much more special by having unique molds. It's also very cool to get specialized weapons being included here as weapons packs for the characters themselves, although of course the weapons were utilized to a lot better degree in some of the other builds for the side builds for this wave. Alright, and with that we have summed up our review of Cole's Earth Dragon EVO. Definitely a really fun set, and I think it's probably one of my favorite EVO dragons color scheme-wise. Just needs a little bit more articulation in the limbs, although thankfully that is pretty easy to fix. But do let me know down in the comments what you think. These are just my thoughts, and I would love to hear yours. What do you think of the set? What are some mods you might make to it? And what do you think of the core dragon line as a whole? How would you rank them? With that, we've summed up this video. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Duckbricks. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming away very soon. And bye for now.